My reading this morning is reading a children's book. I know it shows backwards to you, but it's I've Done It and the Big Wind. And it's by Carol Purdy and pictures by Stephen Kellogg. Back in the days of petticoats and prairie schooners, there was a pioneer woman named I've Done It. She had 6 fine children, Ida and Ivan, Ima and Isaac, Ira and little Iris. They lived on a homestead near the town of Cobb Hollow. Folks in Cobb Hollow wondered how a woman with 6 children could survive alone on the prairie. But that didn't bother I've Done It. She always said, "There's only 3 things we need, our wits, our strength, and young'uns who knows how to stay put." I've Done It wasn't afraid of anything, and she and her 6 fine children could handle most troubles that came their way. Once they fought off a prairie fire. "My young'uns stayed put and done like I told them," bragged I've Done It. Once they saved little Iris from a pack of wolves. "With our strength, we can lick a pack of wolves any day," said I've Done It. Every summer around Cobb Hollow, there came a spell of bad weather folks called the Big Wind. It was a wind so fearsome folks didn't often venture out while it was raging. Why, once the big wind blew old Doc Fenton clean to the next town. He stumbled into the barber shop thinking it was his office and asked the barber what ailed him. Old Doc Fenton was right famous for his scrapes with the big wind. Well, one hot afternoon in August, the big wind started up, and I've Done It rushed her children into the house. "I feel plumb cozy," said I've Done It. "Sure glad I got you 6 fine young'uns to snuggle up with while the wind's a-blowin'." "Sure glad we got this tight house to keep out the big wind," said Isaac. "Yes, sirree," said I've Done It, "and a tight barn to shelter them chickens so we can keep right on collecting their eggs for provisions." "How do you know them chickens are in the barn?" said Ida. "There ain't no critter dumber than a chicken." Right then, I've Done It quit feeling so cozy. "I gotta check them layers," she said. "If we lose our living, you young'uns will get mighty hungry long about the time the beans run out." I've Done It's skirt and petticoats made a sail, and she got to the barn sooner than she expected. "We'll help, Ma," said Isaac. I've Done It couldn't believe her ears. "Didn't I tell you young'uns to stay put?" she cried. "No, Ma, you didn't say nothing about staying put," said Ida. "We come to help save our living." "Y'all get in the house directly," yelled I've Done It. "And this time, stay put." Sure enough, 4 of the best layers were missing. "Blame it all," said I've Done It. "I reckon they'll be scattered all over." Right away, she spotted the hens, but her petticoats kept sailing her back to the barn. "Reckon there's only one answer," said I've Done It, stooping to wiggle out of her skirts. "I 'spect some old homesteader will be surprised to find them petticoats in his barnyard." There she is blowing with the wind. And away goes her petticoats. Just then, I've Done It glanced toward the house and saw an awful sight. A flap of roofing had blown loose. "I'll just hold down the roof while I call those young'uns to bring in a hammer," she said. Soon as I've Done It got there, she realized she couldn't hold down the roof with 2 chickens in each hand, but it took more than that to stop I've Done It. "Good hens," she said as she tied the chickens to her corset strings. Just as she managed to pull the roofing into place, the big wind snatched the ladder I've done it hollered till her throat ached. Her hands were numb and her arms felt near to breaking, but the big wind blew away her voice and no one came. She is hanging on. After a long spell, I've done it said, "Why haven't them youngins come to see what happened to their ma? I'll be blithe to tell them a thing or two when I get down from here." More time passed, and I've done it was entering a dream world. She closed her eyes and had a new thought. Why, those youngins can't come look for me because I told them to stay put. Yes, sirree, if there's one thing I pride myself in, it's having youngins that knows how to stay put. I've done it felt happy. She grabbed a passing chicken by its corset strings and told it, "If I die hanging here in my drawers, those youngins will never know. They'll spend the rest of their days staying put like I told them." But the truth is, I've done its children were finally beginning to wonder what had happened to their ma. The sharp bing, bang, bam of a hammer jarred I've done it back into real life. "Hang on, Ma," said Isaac. "We'll have you down directly." Ivan grabbed I've done it by the waist. "Let's go," he hollered. "How'd you know to come looking for me?" asked I've done it. "Ma, you taught us to use our wits," said Ivan. "When it took a coon's age for you to come back, we figured it was better to go find you than to stay put." "Bless your heart, Ivan," said I've done it. "I'd have dropped soon, and we'd have lost our roof for sure." Tucked safely in bed, I've done it felt like a queen. Ima popped corn that filled the house with a delicious toasty smell, while Ivan and Isaac told how they found Ma dangling from the roof in her drawers, with 4 chickens tied to her corset strings. "Boy, howdy," said Ira. "Ma, Isaac, and Ivan done saved our house and our living from the big wind." I've done it sighed and said, "It's a mighty grand feeling to have your wits and your strength. But the best thing I have is youngins that knows how to stay put and when to go looking for their ma." "Listen," said little Iris, "it sounds like the big wind done quit." "I declare," said I've done it. "What's coming up the road?" "I see a little black bag," said Isaac. "Old Doc Fenton must have got caught out in the big wind again." "But what's all them ruffles?" said Ima. And old Doc Fenton was closer now, and I've done it realized that what the ruffles were, just as Ivan gave a great whoop. "Now y'all hush and don't embarrass Doc Fenton," said I've done it. The big wind blew in a peck of trouble, but leastwise, I'm getting back my petticoats." Doc Fenton with the petticoats on. And that's my reading for today. I've done it in the big wind. And my homily, I seem to spend a lot of time looking for things. Now, my husband said I could blame that on the anxiety because of the coronavirus news, but I have to admit, I lose things a lot, even before this all happened. So I was searching for my cell phone all over the house. I haven't gone anywhere. We're on voluntary self-isolation, and I have not left the house. I tracked back to the last 3 places I've been 3 times over. I called my cell phone 5 times with no results. Meanwhile, creating disaster scenarios. Oh no, did it slip into the water when I loaded the washer? Is it spinning around and around? Will it still work after I fetch it from the washer? How many critical phone calls and texts did I miss? Oh, I'm such a bad girl. Diana, you should always have a pocket, so you don't lay it down somewhere and forget. Shame on me. And where is that psychic ability when I need it? Where do you think it was? Anybody have a guess? So you're going to have to listen to the end of my homily to find out now, aren't you? Okay, somebody guessed. So we'll see at the end. Okay, good. Two good guesses. My purse, my pocket. Very good. You guys are good. Losing things. Do you recognize that scenario? How quickly it escalates into a huge drama? I think we do that a lot. We run through all the disaster scenarios every time something goes wrong. We've got a disaster scenarios running many at once right now, don't we? Along with the resulting shame and blame and the finger pointing. And it doesn't help to listen to the news. What will happen if there aren't enough masks and protective equipment for our hospital workers? What will happen if I have no income for 3 months? 6 months? We go right to the doomsday scenario, don't we? It's the nature of being human. We've all been caught in shifting winds right now. We don't know what to hang on to for grounding, just like I've done it. This is an odd chapter in the story of our world. Everything that we called normal in our life before the virus seems to have gone out the window. We don't know what our lives will be like 1 month from now, let alone 1 year from now. Turmoil surrounds us. Things are shifting every day. Is there any hope? Here at ISD Oneonta, the Finance Committee has been trying to predict a budget for next year. Now, normally, you could predict next year's income based on how well we did last year, which was pretty darn good. But the times they are changing, there is no normal. We may have 3 months being unable to hold classes and events, which are a significant part of our income. In the normal way of doing things, we would run a lot of disaster scenarios and we would all agree that yes, the universe is out to get us. And unwittingly put a lot of energy into manifesting the disasters. May as well just shrivel up and fade away. But that's not who we are at ISD, is it? We will let the wind take us, acknowledging that we don't know what we don't know, but we do know that wherever we land, we'll be in a good place and all will be well and maybe even better. Okay, we're going through a bad time right now, really bad, and it may get worse, but how will we rise from the ashes? In order to rise out of the ashes, there needs to be a fire first, right? Burning down our old normal ways of doing things. Carolyn Meese said that we needed to go through what she calls a dark night of the soul to reach spiritual enlightenment and a truly happy life. Well, I always rejected that idea. I didn't like that at all. I don't want to think about having to be some catastrophe and being dragged through the mud emotionally in order to get to my happy place or to get to enlightenment. So I thought if I've got to go through hell to get to enlightenment, I don't want any part of it. It should be fun and joyful, right? I even gave the book away. And now, this many years later, I'm curious, what is a dark night of the soul anyway? And this is what Carolyn Meese says about it. And I quote, "A dark night of the soul is when you feel lost, ungrounded, and abandoned." Ooh, check. Sounds like what we're going through right now in our lives with the pandemic, right? She goes on to say, many people assume and often mistake the dark night for depression, or that it emerges into one's life following an emotional crisis such as a divorce. But a dark night will often enter a person's life in the midst of their most joyous time. It is always profound, but not necessarily catastrophic, and provides an opportunity to hear the voice of guidance. Ooh, I'm going to repeat that. There's the gem. An opportunity to hear the voice of guidance. So, a dark night of the soul, like what we were going through now, is a good time to rev up a spiritual practice, to meditate, to strengthen your connection to that feeling of oneness and transcendence, to get our own answers to the dilemma we face through meditation and prayer, and to know that we are guided to find the life lesson that the dilemma has taught us. Are there areas of your life that you've been putting up with or trying to change and you don't feel much progress over the years? maybe this is a good time to reflect on why we have not made progress. What's the life lesson? And finally, make changes. It's scary to make changes, isn't it? Why is change so confronting? Esther Hicks says that people resist change because they focus more on what they are giving up than what they have to gain. Maybe we needed this dark night of the soul to shake us out of our sameness and instead focus on what we have to gain. And when the winds of change are over, there may be a new you looking back at you in the mirror. We know that by looking at history, that when we've gone through a tumultuous dark night of the soul as a nation in the past, we've made enormous strides for the good of humankind by the end of it. I have two examples for us. One, my parents bought a cottage in the Adirondacks only because of the polio epidemic that was raging in 1952. My mother was so terrified of her children getting polio and becoming paralyzed that they borrowed $3,000 from my grandparents to buy a lovely little place on Garnet Lake so that all 7 of my siblings and I would have a safe haven to go to every summer to avoid catching polio. Do you remember that? I don't know if any of you were through that time or you've read about it in history if you didn't live through it yourself, that children were catching polio by going to public pools, is what it said, large groups of kids on their summer activities. So that cottage that my parents bought in order to get us into the fresh air and get away from all this still belongs to my family, and we still go there for the fresh air, and we have this wonderful place for family reunions and many, many happy memories. And the other thousands of children at that time were paralyzed, and one of our US presidents as well, do you know who it was? Had it as a child. Quiz. Who's got it?
Oh, I do.
Go ahead, say it. Who's the president that had polio?
Isn't it Roosevelt?
Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You got brownie points. Who said that? Good job. So my second example of huge strides made for the good of humankind out of a dark night of the soul is this. I'm sure that many of you have a physician assistant as a primary care provider, or there's one in your office. But did you know that the role of physician assistant came about in one of the darkest times we face in our history, wartime? And after the Vietnam War, there were many soldiers who acquired medical skills, as they do on any battlefield, and came back from the war and wanted to be able to use those medical skills stateside, and there was no role for them. So the US Army developed a physician's assistance program in 1971 and graduated 240 physician's assistants who went on to serve in clinics and emergency rooms, hospitals, and care for patients around the country. So our current pandemic is a chapter that will end. And as we look back at this chapter 5 years from now, we will recognize it as the time we hit the reset. Will we recognize it as the time we hit the reset button? We started over, both personally and as a nation. We have the opportunity to look back at what is not working in our lives and in the nation, or the desires we had only half-heartedly reached for. And this is the dark night of the soul that we used to start finding solutions and have it lead to a whole new me or a whole new nation, more purpose-driven and more on target with my soul's mission. And what advances in medicine and human welfare might we be bragging about in 5 years? Will our government decide that healthcare will be necessary for everyone? Maybe paid sick leave for everyone, for all, would become instituted so that people don't have to go to work sick, but can stay home and avoid spreading the disease at the workplace. If Jonas Salk came up with a vaccine against polio only 6 months after the height of the polio pandemic, how quickly will our present-day scientists working around the clock come up with a vaccine that fixes the problem? And maybe we will be less reliant on pharmaceuticals and be much more reliant and knowledgeable about natural cures and preventative lifestyle changes that are even more effective than pharmaceuticals. Can we see the hope now? I love the affirmation, I view turmoil as a reason for making productive changes. And we can see it in practice both in society and in our personal lives right now. Turmoil, not enough masks. Productive change, people are sewing masks and giving them to hospitals. Companies that normally make diapers are now starting a production line of surgical and protective masks. Old, unproductive ways of doing things are being shut down. Solutions are coming just as fast as the problems. Where is the bright side in social isolation? And now that we've learned to use Zoom, my husband and I have had virtual dinner parties with friends and family we would not have seen until the next family gathering, which may not have occurred until there was a funeral or a wedding. The strengthening of relationships was not something that we could have expected in a time of forced social distancing. Oh, and back to the turmoil in my own house, where did that darn phone go? Renee was right. It was in my purse, right where it should be. A place I had checked 3 times. So meanwhile, enjoy binge watching on Netflix. Continue to reach out to those you love. Be of service when it's your turn. And take good care of yourself. And go where the wind takes you. And as my dad used to say, as I took the car keys from his hands and hopped into the family car to drive away, watch out for the other guy. Or as we might say now, stay 6 feet away from the other guy. Thank you.